You're over in the Haight. What about over here?
Not so much.
Not
I mean,
much
I think
outreach.
there's no ongoing services, and when we're talking about having a drop-in or a center where people can stop by, outreach needs to be something that's really consistent. Like, while it's really great if it happens for one shift a week, it needs to happen every day, because that's the way you build rapport with the youth and get them to access other services that they may need. So I think there definitely needs to be a team dedicated to the Castro, preferably young people who have some kind of experience with homelessness themselves.
And I think to add to that, these outreach workers not only, they need to be not organization specific.
Yeah.
They need to represent the services of the entire city, so that when we're providing services to these youth, like whether or not they've been 86 from a certain program or whatever, they have other options to go to. Because you can have an outreach worker from Larkin Street talk about Larkin Street, but are they trained on the other programs as well?
Brenda, is that yours?
Our outreach is, I mean, it's the whole Castro, so it's not just here on Castro Street. So, I mean, we go where we see the people. So it may be here, sometimes it's out in the park, sometimes it's, down on Church, maybe Market. I mean, we go where people are. So if we don't see them and we don't do it, our whole shift is not outreach, we're intensive case management. So, I mean, we devote outreach to the Castro, but it's not, we do better if people email us, okay, there's particular individuals that people are concerned about or whatever, they want housing, or, I mean, that's what we do, we provide access to housing. So.
Was there more outreach in the past? Or is it
Yeah, and I think
model?
definitely when EVRC was happening, I mean, that was a happening center and the kids loved coming here, and it was such an amazing community. And I think that when that program closed, the Castro really lost something.
When did it close? Do you know?
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
About
Really?
2-3 years ago when Mitch O retired, and then Parks and Recs, and then it kind of just, the hiccup of services, it kind of fell through the cracks. Because I know when I was doing outreach 5 years ago, we were doing outreach in the Castro 3-4 days a week. Right now, the outreach team for me is out here on Tuesdays in the afternoon for about 5 to 6 hours. And then one of the other outreach teams at Larkin Street is out here on Friday afternoons. So it's definitely decreased.
Jennifer?
I just want to add something to it, because I think kind of the parameter of the question is really around outreach, but there's a bigger a bigger issue. And you could do all the outreach in the world, and if there's no housing for folks that's appropriate, and it's not really effective. And so even like with the hot team, which added services into the Castro, the services that the hot team are able to get people into, especially the housing specifically, it's going to be in the Tenderloin, most likely in single room occupancy hotels. It may not be culturally appropriate for the youth, and not really, so for example, if it's a community and we're talking about the queer community, or specifically the queer youth community, you really want to have your resources in that same community. And that's a more appropriate place to do it. And so, for some folks, the Tenderloin may be okay, but for a lot of the folks, it's just not,
Safe.
it's not where
It's not safe.
It's not going to feel safe. It's not going to be actually safe. They're going to end up being very much targeted by older folks that are going to see them as an easy victim. All this kind of stuff going on. Not to mention different levels of homophobia, et cetera, et cetera. So there's
and different levels of drug use.
And different levels of drug use, and different drug use. So, for
drug
example, if we're sending folks to, young 21-year-old, young female, for example, to the Tenderloin in a hotel that has a really excessive amount of crack addiction, what's actually going to be happening with the young woman is that her door is going to be getting knocked on, even though she's got it. Her door is going to be knocked on 24 hours a day. She is going to be harassed nonstop, regardless of what her sexual orientation is. She is going to be offered all kinds of drugs. She is going to be probably still be really impoverished and offered economic opportunities to do things that may not be particularly safe. So I just, this is kind of the reality of what is going to be offered through the city in terms of the hot team coming in and in terms of what resources they have in their in their array of resources.
Let me
So,
ask one quick question. I know we're dealing with large numbers, 30% of a very big number is a very big number. And we have if it is, it's unfortunate. We have the Paramount Hotel down the street, and I think there are roughly 8 to 10 beds or rooms with counseling, et cetera. Any comment on the success of that program, Lachlan?
We have the Castro Youth Housing Initiative as part of Larkin Street Youth Services, but that's only 20 to 30 beds
Yeah.
in the Castro.
It's
Where's
limited.
it at?
So it's at the Paramount, it's at, Liz, do you know what other hotels it's at right now? Not
I
to
don't
put
know
you on the
specific
spot.
names.
They have one on
Yeah.
Howard Street, right? It's on Howard and Summer.
Yeah, so
20 to
it's
30
at a
beds.
few different places, but I mean, that's 20 to 30
30
beds.
beds. Okay.
And that's not much at all, and that's a transitional living program, so you're forgetting about a whole emergency shelter option as well. And also, the Housing First modality does not work for everybody either.
I'm sorry, what you said?
The Housing First modality, it's a wonderful thing, but one thing to remember is that it doesn't work for everybody, and it can be traumatizing for some youth. And so it's all about, I mean, that's the nice thing about outreach and the drop-ins, is getting to know that youth, getting to know the history, building the rapport, so that you can make an accurate referral. So that even if it's not just in Larkin Street, the staff also know housing programs outside of, or shelters outside of, so that it can be an accurate referral, so youth can actually be successful and it's not traumatizing.
I think I was about to go along the same lines, but to go back on outreach a little bit, I've had to stop doing outreach for my programs because I experienced such a high number at a lot of them that if youth come to meal night and there's no food there, they're not going to come back, and that's not going to help them whatsoever. And so, I mean, last month alone we had, I think, a meal night with over 30 people there, and we have a budget short of $200 to feed that amount of people is a little ridiculous.
Mike?
One of the first questions is why are they homeless? And all the reasons we're saying is why they're homeless. There's not a lot of safe housing options here in the city, regardless of the neighborhood or not. And we make housing available routinely to the youth that we work with. And so many of them decline because it's going to be in the Tenderloin. They don't want to be around crack cocaine. They don't feel safe. So they choose to live
I
on
mean,
the
it's
street.
much safer for these youth to live in that community that they're a part of in the park, in any park, on the street, because they do have that safety net. They have that family that they've built on the street.
They've got each other's back.
And I think what happens when you move people into any kind of hotel, there's no community space, and youth need that community space. They need a large living room to have movie nights. They need a kitchen where they can cook their own food. I mean, single room occupancies don't even have kitchens for people. So I think that youth sometimes remain on the street because they have much more of a community than they'll have isolated indoors in a place where they don't feel safe.
So what's happening in the Haight? Is there anything that's
There's
getting-
no housing whatsoever.
There's
in
no
Haight.
housing at all.
And I doubt there will be at the rate the NIMBYs fight services up there.
Everybody else, any other thoughts on the Haight? What's
I mean, we
working?
don't even have showers in the Haight anymore.
Really?
Because the neighbors felt like that promoted homelessness.
All we have is Mary's drop-in and then our drop-in. And then, medical services, but there's not showers.
It's not even a food
For
program
showers,
anymore.
once again, once a week we have overage day downtown, and then other ones that are spread throughout the city.
Mary, can you tell us about your program in the Haight?
Yeah, so we're open 5 days a week. We have a drop-in between 3 and 4 hours each day. That time, the kids are able to come in. They can sleep, they can make food, use the bathrooms, use the phones, get mail, use the internet, meet with staff to get ID, birth certificate, any kind of referral. If they want to go to treatment, if they want to get back in school, if they want to reunite with their families, that's all time for them to meet with staff and talk about that. Mike is with us 4 days a week and can do single session therapy with the kids. Then we'll do groups. We have like a girls group, a boys group, a health group, an art group, an overdose education group. So those happen every week. We do needle exchange 3 evenings a week. We have medical services 3 evenings a week. What else am I forgetting?
We provide a ton of food, clothing.
A lot of, yeah, food, clothing. We see between 60 to 100 kids a shift.
a day.
Yeah.
How are you funded? Just curious.
Well, not very well right now, but we do get some city funding. That's been cut by over 25% recently. Some foundation funding and some private donors who respect us. Usually not in our area, but yeah. So it's very diverse.